Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's live trading session and trade review session. For those of you with me early today, you'll know that I was stopped out on this move higher, principally through the DAX position that I was holding. We've seen this a number of times over the last few months, where the DAX remains very strong throughout the trading day. I would imagine that a couple of stops have triggered on the way up. There was a bit of a short squeeze that corrected for a short period of time, but then we're back up trading towards the highs of the day after we've seen both the Bank of England and the ECB raise rates today by the 50 basis points. That was largely expected. But some good language coming out of the conferences, both from the Bank of England and from the ECB. The ECB conference has only just finished, or is only just finishing. I haven't listened to all of it. But from the Bank of England conference that came earlier this morning, a couple of statements that were made, that the CPI is likely to have peaked, and that the Bank of England will no longer forcefully respond on rates. So the idea is certainly that the rates are going to slow down, or rate increases are going to slow down from this point, and you can see that in the currencies to a certain extent. And the way that they've traded will show you those, or I'll show you those in a few minutes. But as I'm talking, we're going back towards the highs of the day, both for the Dow and for the DAX. Gold has sold off considerably. I was short gold this morning at 1953. It's the last of the trades that I've put on. I was looking for it to come off as aggressively as it had, but the DAX position unfortunately put paid to that position, and that incessant rally to the upside. And when we've seen patterns like this in the DAX in the past, there have tended to be a couple of days of these types of movement where the DAX moves higher and in quite relentless fashion. So we need to keep an eye on that over the next few days. But so just to have a quick look at the currencies, you'll see there that after the Fed decision yesterday, the euro rallied up to about 110.30 as a high. I tried to sell at 110.20 this morning, so around these levels. Missed out probably by something like about 7 pips, missed out by this morning, and then we've fallen away all the way down to about 109.30 before recovering to where we are now, around that 109.52 level. So keep an eye certainly on any moves above 110, and what you're thinking about, or what you're trying to think about, is the way that rates are going to change comparatively over the next period. And I'd suggest that on the back of what we've heard over the last 2 days, both with the Fed meeting, the Bank of England meeting, and the ECB meeting, that there is a chance, and it is only a chance. I'm not certainly suggesting that this is by any means definitely going to happen, but there is a chance that the ECB and the Bank of England may reduce rates quicker than their US counterpart. And also they may slow their rate increases more considerably than the US. I think one of the things that we heard, or that I heard when Jerome Powell was talking yesterday, is that they will remain on this path of rate increases for the foreseeable future. Yes, they've slowed to a 25 basis point increase yesterday, but there is still work to be done, and I think the markets at the moment are fooling themselves a little bit. I would like to see the Dow open up a little bit higher this afternoon and sell into it. You'll see I have a limit up there at the moment at 34,233. have a bid down at 34,060. So it's going to be interesting just to see how that flow comes into the market over the next 4 minutes or so, and just see whether the rate increases that we've seen in the UK and the Eurozone, whether they've been quite readily accepted, and the focus has been on the language that we've seen from the two representatives of those institutions, which is suggesting, as with Jerome Powell yesterday, that disinflation certainly has, or we are well on a path of disinflation. That being the case, may well be that we see another lift off the market from the opening bell, but I would be more inclined to sell into, because there is, as Jerome Powell said yesterday, still work to be done. He is going to keep those rates elevated for some time. They are going to be higher for longer, and I think that will certainly be the case in the UK and in the Eurozone as well. And I think after that initial burst of euphoria that we might see on the opening bell, I think there could be a reasonable sell-off and a certain amount of profit taking. I wrote yesterday morning, when I was writing the market comment, that there may be a classic buy on the rumour, sell on the fact. Didn't really happen yesterday. It was quite volatile during the conference, and after the rate decision. The initial move was a sell-off, and then we rallied back up and closed higher on the day, although it was only slightly higher on the Dow. Energy stocks weighing the Dow down yesterday, but certainly the underperformer of the 3 US indices, so may lend itself to a little bit more upside today. But as I've mentioned a couple of times already during what I've had to say, I'll be looking to sell into that upside. But at the moment, my limit sell and my limit bid are both about 80 points away from the market at the moment. Just really waiting to see what that flow is on the opening bell in the next couple of minutes. Currencies, which I've already spoken about, are reasonably flat. So the euro's continuing to trade around 109.50, sterling 123, 17.18 at the moment. And the DAX, which has been up to around 14,000 and been up to about 15,490, is about 25 pips off of those levels at the moment. So there is a bit of stability coming back into gold. I still think there's potential for that to sell off. Certainly didn't like it up around 1960. I sold at 1950. excuse me, 1959 a couple of times this morning. And took small profits on those, but as I said, the overriding position, and we'll talk about my positions in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. The overriding position, unfortunately, was a DAX position, which rallied significantly higher, and eventually squeezed me out of that particular position. So we're getting closer to the bell here. The Dow, I'm just going to open up the Dow here so we can see it in a bit more detail. There is a 1 minute, this is a 1 minute chart, so the moves will be fairly pronounced on this, but the bell is getting very close now. We've dropped off 10-15 pips or so, and are probably 120 pips, or maybe not so much, 100 pips higher than the close yesterday, and there the market is open. So we're ticking, it's reasonably stable from the beginning. I'm not seeing a great deal of movement in either direction, probably just a little bit of a drift off there at this particular point. So I do have a bid in to try and pick up a position around 34,060. Not rushing in. I think we're at a very pivotal point in this market. As I've mentioned for a number of weeks, I do expect the rate increases to continue for some time, certainly until we hit that terminal rate that the Fed has been focusing on. And I think when some of the discussions got round to the terminal rate yesterday with Jerome Powell, there were a few questions that he certainly skirted and pointed towards the minutes that would come out in a month or so's time, I think. So we're getting fairly close to my limit. Didn't quite trigger, but we're still very close to it at this particular time. I'll just keep a close eye on that. So we've drifted down about 60 or so points since the market opened. I think I'm just about to trigger there, and have triggered. So I'm long the market at the moment, around the 34,060 level. So we're fairly flat on that at this particular point. I'd like to think that after this initial few moves that we see here around the opening bell, that we might see a bit of upside in this market, and a few programs coming in. Like I said, I think it's going to be short-lived, so I'm not looking to hold this particular position for too long, but I would like to see a lift back up towards that 34,100 level as we continue to watch this. So there is a bit of buying coming in there. Might just, I mean, if you want to put some limits in, might be appropriate to do so. I think one of the things that we will have seen over the last few days is that the market has been very fast. If you are trying to hit things at the market, either on an entry or an exit, it's become increasingly difficult over the last number of days. So using limits certainly does give you a bit of an advantage. Just going to take 25 to 30 pips out of the market there. Just leave my limit offer in at this time. So so it's a decent little trade there around the opening bell. You've got 35 points worth of profit at the moment if you're still in that particular trade. I've closed, and we'll look at possibilities of an additional entry point as we go through this session, but looking for a bit of a bid to catch hold in this market. Looking back at the DAX, it's traded off a little bit, back down to 15,460. Sterling and the euro are fairly pretty much where we were when we spoke at the beginning of this session, and gold has ticked off a little bit. I think gold excuse me, I have a bit of a cough today. Gold is still susceptible to a little bit of a sell-off, so keep an eye on that. And what we'll do is I'll start to go through the results for this week, and if you have any questions about either the trading or anything in particular in the market at this particular time, we'll go through the results now, and then maybe come back for a little summary of where I think each of these markets are at the moment. So decent sell-off there now in the Dow. Very briefly touched 34,000. I think that was a good example of quite how fast these markets are at the moment. If you don't have limits in there and you're trying to enter or exit the trade just off of trading that market, it is very, very difficult. Just look at the last candlestick there, where we're trading probably in the middle of it at the moment, but that candlestick ranges from 34,000 all the way up to 34,057 in less than 1 minute. So please use limits if you're looking to exit. I know that, you know, my approach is more often to trade at market, but it is getting increasingly difficult with some of these really quick moves to the downside. So we're back down, trading towards that 34,000 level at this particular point. A level that I could be interested in after I finish this session, I think because the markets are so fast, it's not something that I want to take another trade in at this particular point unless it rallies to the upside. Gold is continuing to come off. Currencies have come off a little bit, and I'm going to look at the results now. So there's the results so far. So we have the Dow trade that I just did there, which will turn the week slightly, very, very slightly positive as it stands. So we're probably about 15 pips up for the week at the moment. So as you can see very clearly, two very good days, Monday and Wednesday, and two very bad days, Tuesday and Thursday. And what happened on Tuesday and Thursday, was I got too exposed to one particular product. So on Tuesday it was gold, today it's been the DAX, and running 2 or 3 trades of a similar position has caused me to be stopped out. I think it's certainly in the case of Tuesday. I wrote about this as the market started to rally. Long gold, as you can see there, at 1913, 1909. The highest price was 1917, so they were all long positions. Gold fell away to 1900, so I've stopped out at 1906.3, and then the market rallied back excuse me, to 1931. So all of those trades would have been significantly in profit at that point, but running those 3 positions meant that I was unable to survive that dip. Had it just been one position, and I may go back to a situation where I am just running 2 positions, possibly a maximum of 3 for the next period, just to see how that goes. I think sometimes when you have a good week, as I did last week with over 1,000 pips being returned, sometimes it's quite easy to become overconfident and start to trade a bit aggressively. I think that happened Tuesday. Today, I shouldn't really have let that happen, but the rally was surprising, and I did, as I still do now, I still expect the indices to break down at some point during the remainder of this afternoon. I don't think any of the other trades bear any particular merit. It was just a case of becoming overexposed to gold Tuesday, the DAX today, and not managing that position as well as I should. So we'll just very quickly go back to the markets and where they're trading at the moment. So the Dow has come off, so we're trading down there to 33,930. Gold down at 1942. The DAX still strong, still well above closing levels yesterday, but off significantly, 50-60 points from where we were trading earlier. Very interested in buying into the Dow with this sell-off at this particular point. I think there will be buyers who come back into this market. Not sure I want to hold anything for too long for the remainder of the day, but we are seeing a bit more of a sell-off there in the DAX at the time. So look for a possible buy in the Dow when I get back onto Telegram in a few minutes. I'll cancel that limit offer that I have up above the market at the moment, and just look potentially for a bit of a bounce this afternoon. I mean, we've come off, we've gone there just briefly below 33,900, but come off significantly from the level that we were trading just a few short minutes ago. Sorry, I've just lost all of the markets there. So just in summary of a few of the others, I mean, gold still continuing to go down. Sterling's dipped below 123. So it seems to be a certain amount of business as usual with the currencies in relation to the sell-off that we're seeing. A bit of strength coming back into the dollar after the moves or the rate increases that we've seen in the UK and by the ECB, and the belief that maybe there isn't too much more to come from those 2 particular organisations. Gold has touched 1940 while I've been talking. I think what I'll do is I'll finish up there. If you do have any questions, please keep sending those through to me. I will come back to you during the remainder of today and possibly look to get long the Dow in the next few minutes. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will speak to you